How important is it when you're building your assessment centres that you take into account the needs of your candidates? So we're seeing a large rise in needs of neurodiversity and sort of those neurodiverse candidates, but also from a wider equality, diversity and inclusion perspective. How important do you feel it is to have those fundamentals underpinning your assessments?
Which is the most important thing, right? It's giving them what they need to have the same starting point. So we should never assume that people process information the same way that we do. And we should never assume that when we ask them to do something and, showcase their skills, they put all of them to start from the same start point. So when we do our initial conversation with the candidates to invite them, and kind of like, the talent screening bit, that's, the cornerstone really of talent acquisition,
Yeah.
we always ask the question about whether they need reasonable adjustment, when there is something that could potentially affect and impact their ability to perform.
Yeah.
But I think it's very, very important to also know that very often people don't feel comfortable disclosing that because there is still stigma. Even though we talk more openly about it, and DEI is now a massive part of HR in a business, I think it needs to be engraved in the DNA of every company. And until we can take those biases away from the process and make them feel that when we ask them, it's not just a ticking exercise. It's not just so we can make a decision based on that, but really to help them, support them, and make sure that they get everything that they deserve. They don't feel as comfortable to disclose it, and we still see it, day to day. Even though we have through the application that in no way, shape, or form would make a decision based on that, and it's not a decision-making factor, essentially. They still feel a little bit doubtful on disclosing it. And also, what I think as well is very often when we ask they ask the question, I don't necessarily think they understand what we talent acquisition in general and companies mean by that. So I think they don't understand what reasonable adjustment means and if they qualify for it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of a kind of like an educational piece and a stigma piece. But to your question, how important it is for us, it's at the heart of everything we do. We cannot claim that we are an inclusive company, we're an inclusive culture, and then exclude in whatever capacity others. So we are, the presentations that we're giving need to be in a format that is friendly for neurodiverse people. Not talking just about the font or the colors and everything, but the information is processed in easy to process, and with some exercise that we're actually doing right now with our employer brand partner, where we want to create some more material as well to ensure that when we do have neurodiverse candidates or candidates who do need reasonable adjustments, we're using the right materials in there as well. So we're flexible and adaptable in the way that we run our processes. And if some people don't flourish when they are in a social environment, they feel very anxious. So how can someone who has a lot of anxiety or might be autistic and not necessarily do well with social cues, how can they flourish in an environment that is an assessment center, so potentially individual when we know can make those adjustments, training and like ensuring that our managers understand what it really means